Good morning. I feel like a teacher in third grade. The teacher's always said, good morning, class. It's an honor. I don't know that Mike really drafted me, but he asked me to speak. I think it's an honor to talk to you today. And it's always good for my heart to be around other Southern nationalists. It's something I crave on a day-to-day basis because I spend a lot of time alone in my car traveling and stuff like that. So it's always nice to be around other Southern nationalists. Y'all hear me okay? I think I gave Mike a title for my talk. Originally, it was going to be the myth of American nationalism. I sensed I'm going to change the name of it, and here's why. I listened to a lecture by Dr. Clyde Wilson on the way over, and he was talking about the Lincoln myth, but he said that's not accurate. A myth is a product of the folk. It's not necessarily truly accurate, but it's something that the folk produce again now from generation to generation to generation. Anyway, is anybody in here hard of hearing besides me? Okay.
Turn it up just a little bit, you know.
Well, I think
It's wide open. Can you turn it up just a little bit?
It might be that you're not quite close enough.
yeah, I might, it's probably just like, how's that? Okay, all right, yeah. Good.
If I talk right into it.
All right, I can do that. So I changed the name of the talk to the Fable of American Nationalism. Reason is, a fable, by definition, is a truly fictitious narrative, where a myth is something that's a product of the folk. It's something that may not, like I said, be strictly accurate, but it's something that's, well, take Robin Hood, for example, or King Arthur. Those are myths, but it's something that's a product of the folk. Anyway, so the Fable of American Nationalism. I'm going to start off just a tad slow. Reason being is I needed to find some words. But let me say this first. If we're going to communicate, if we're going to have a debate, we need to have the same understanding of the words we're using. Otherwise, we can't communicate, or we can't debate accurately. So, I'll give you an example. The word racist, okay? You could fill a dictionary with the definition of that word because it's based on the feelings of the person using it. Okay, so you can't communicate with somebody when you have a different definition of the words. Another word would be gay. That would be another word that is, I had a friend for years who was also my business partner. His name was Ben Gay. He would always say, look, I've been gay all my life. Or he would say, aha, I'm Ben Gay, don't rub it in. But anyway, when he said he was gay all his life, he wasn't gay as today. He was not an abomination. He was just a happy-go-lucky kind of person. He really was. But anyway, the definition of those words can fill dictionaries now. I seem to remember that when God wanted to confuse and separate people, He changed their language at the Tower of Babel. I think that's being done to us today. And I'm going to explain to you what I'm talking about. I want to take the word nation, and that's created a lot of confusion, down through history, especially today. I mean, even with people in this room, when we talk about that thing or that word, nation, we may have different thoughts about what that word means. So I'm going to define it for you. And I'm going to show you where and why it was changed, the definition of that word. I have two dictionaries, actually I have 30 or 40, but the two I'm going to use for this talk, one of them is the full Oxford Dictionary of the English Language, 1981 edition. The second one is a reprinted Webster's Dictionary, is 1828, and I have both. And so I'm going to give you the definitions of the word nation out of those two dictionaries. I'm going to do the Oxford first because that's the one I'm going to use today. Here it is: an extensive aggregate of persons so closely associated with each other by common descent, language, or history as to form a distinct race or people. Come on. Usually organized as a separate political state occupying a definite territory. One of the main reasons I like the Oxford Dictionary, it gives you the first usage of the word, it gives you historical usages of the word. Here's some historical commentary from Oxford on that word. In early examples, the racial idea is usually stronger than the political. In recent use, the notion of political unity and independence is more prominent. Well, let's go to Webster's 1828. See if you can follow this, because this thing is really hard to follow. A body inhabiting the same country. See, he's already added something to the definition already. He added the word country. Or united under the same sovereign or governments as the English nation or the French nation. It often happens that many nations are subject to one government, in which case the word nation usually denotes a body of people speaking the same language, or a body that has formerly been under a distinct government, but has been conquered or incorporated within another nation. Y'all following this? I'm not. I don't know what he's talking about. But thus, the empire of Russia comprehends many nations, as did formerly the Roman and Persian empires. Nation, as its etymology imports, now he's going back to the definition that the Oxford used. Nation, as its etymology imports, originally denoted a family or a race of men, descended from a common progenitor, like a tribe, but by immigration, not immigration, conquest and intermixture of men of different families, this distinction is in most countries lost. Wow, I don't know where he got all that stuff, but I think he did it on purpose. But can you see the difference? The Oxford definition of a nation is something that's grown from the people and from the folk. It grows from the bottom up. The definition that Webster uses is something that's made from the top down. It's imposed through conquest or other means. It's imposed. So I think Webster did that on purpose. I really do. That's why I went back to the 1828. If you go to modern Webster's dictionaries, the definition is a little bit different. They add United or the U.S. nation or the American nation into the definition and all that. Oxford gives you a picture, like I said, of something grown, something that grows up from kith and kin. Okay? That's what a nation is. According to Noah Webster, a nation is something that's imposed through conquest or whatever. I'm going to tell you something right now. Webster was a federalist, or what we would call today a centralized or centrist. Is it possible, think about it, is it possible that he changed that definition on purpose? I made that accusation a few minutes ago. I think it is. There's a lot of evidence that supports that he changed a lot of words when he came out of that dictionary. Not just the word nation. But I'll leave it, you can dig it out, because I have lost all the articles that I've read about that conspiracy to change the language and that sort of thing. But I will say this, Noah Webster was a Yankee. Stone dead Yankee. Yeah, that's what he was. Remember that when you hear somebody use the word lunch instead of dinner. He changed the language. He did it on purpose. You need to remember this when you're using the Webster's dictionary. It is not a dictionary of the English language. It is a dictionary of New England English language. Remember that. I'm going to use the Oxford definition like I said earlier. I'm going to repeat it real quick. An extensive aggregate of persons so closely associated with each other by common descent, language, or history as to form a distinct race or people, usually organized as a separate political state and occupying a definite territory. In early examples, this is historical commentary, in early examples, the racial idea is usually stronger than the political. In recent use, Webster, the notion of political unity and independence is more prominent. All right, let's look at the word nationalist real quick. Oxford defines it, one characterized by national tendencies or sympathies, an adherent to or supporter of nationalism. Webster does not define it. It's not in the 1828 dictionary. It's not there. I want to take a real quick look, what a Yankee is. Many of you have read Dr. Clyde Wilson's definition of a Yankee. I don't have it with me, but it's classic. It's probably one of the best out there. But have you ever heard Sut Lovingood's definition? Do you know who Sut Lovingood is? Yeah. He was a fictional character. As a matter of fact, Huck Finn was based on the character Sut Lovingood. He was a fictional character by a writer who was antebellum, but he did write throughout the Reconstruction era. Well, Sut was one of his characters, and George Washington Harris was a humorist. Anyway, he wrote, and this was during Reconstruction, he wrote many of Sut's tales during that period of time, and Sut was an Appalachian mountain backwoods realist, okay? He saw through Yankee sham and hypocrisy. You could see right through it. And Sut says, I'm unreconstructed on the Indian question. He can't understand why, when they had the chance, that they didn't circumcise the heads of all those that came over on the Mayflower and sink the vessel itself. He said, all that would have been lost was the poisoning of a few shoals of fish and the pollution of Plymouth Bay. Small price to pay to rid the world of such a plague. He goes on, he sees Yankee self-righteousness and sanctimonious stuff full of Sut. He goes on to say that the synonym for Yankee is cheat. As the snail slimes, as the mink sucks blood, as the dung beetle rolls dung, and the dog returns to his farm, the Yankee cheats, because every farmer has his gift. That's Sut's definition of the Yankee. If you haven't read Sut Lovingood, do it. You will have a lot of fun, I promise you. You will have a lot of fun. When someone uses the term American, what do they mean? Usually it's somebody that's within the United States. Well, is the United States a nation? By Oxford definition, no. It's not. The U.S. is an artificial corporation that has coercive power over a defined territory and thinks it has coercive power over the world now. But it's only 545 people in the District of Columbia, along with all of its millions of minions around the world, or employees, you can call them that if you want to. But it's not a nation. Never has been. Never has been. I know that Webster would like to have made it one, but it wasn't. It isn't. It's formed a syndicate with large corporations, money changers, and NGOs, or non-governmental organizations, and I'll name two of them that everybody here is familiar with. Southern Poverty Law Center, right down the street here, that's a non-governmental organization that the government listens to. Well, maybe not anymore. Maybe some of y'all have heard the news from the FBI the past week, where the FBI, the intelligence they're getting from the ADL and the SPLC, they're figuring out it's not very intelligent, so they're not listening to them anymore, supposedly. So I guess Mark Kotok won't be on TV as much, maybe. I don't watch TV. I haven't watched it for 35 years. I call it a weapon of mass confusion. That's what I call television, or something along those lines. Weapon of mass confusion. Well, anyway, the United States has no national identity, and I think it was Kerosene Billy that somewhere in one of his writings said that it's too bad that the United States didn't have a proper national adjective. I mean, what are they going to call you, United States again? You know, something like that. But anyway, the U.S. has no national identity. It's a modern state syndicate, or an artificial corporation. It was made by war of subjugation, forcing two separate nations into one, and then falsely calling itself a nation. It's done by the same method used by the French, by Bismarck. You know, there were more independent countries in Germany than there are in the world today before Bismarck unified them with the policy of blood and iron. And let's say Hitler was a nut. I'm just saying that for You know, let's say, what would he have had to work with if Bismarck had not unified Germany? It's just something to think about. I mean, so what if he was a nut? He'd probably still been a beggar in Vienna, I don't know. But anyway, this method of massive centralization that was used by Bismarck, the French, Lenin, the United States government, still going on today, follows right along with Webster's 1828 definition of a nation. It doesn't follow along Oxford's, because that's something that grows from the bottom up. It's not imposed from the top down. Well, then what is American nationalism? It's a fable. It's a strictly fictitious narrative. It doesn't exist. It's just something somebody made up. Being an American is a geographical term. You can be from South Carolina, Guatemala, Chile, Quebec, Argentina, Georgia, Alabama. You're an American because it's a geographic term. There's 2 American continents and 3 American, you know, you got North America, Central America, and South America. So whenever I'm in a conversation trying to explain Southern nationalism to someone, and you know, you get that look like, what do you mean? You know, he says, well, we're all Americans here, right? And I'll look back at him and say, well, geographically, because that's true, unless you're from Europe or something. Most Europeans today, the British in particular, and a lot of the world call us Yankees. I find that offensive. I really do. I find that offensive, and I don't get offended about much. Usually things just roll off my back. If someone calls me a Yankee or a Yank, I take offense to that, because that's a fictional thing that, you know, most Europeans call us that. Prior to the war to prevent Southern independence, there were 2 major embryonic national identities on this continent, or within the confines of what we would call the U.S. territory today. The people of New England and the people of the South. The Indian nations were not really recognized as such at that point in time. They are today, but not then. There were also quite a few minor nations encompassed within those 2 major identities. You had the Dutch, Manhattanese Dutch, the Quakers. You had the Salzburgers in Georgia. There were a bunch of nations that had grown up for kith and kin. I mean, within incorporated, you know, there was only 2 major ones. That would be the Yankees and the Southerners. I can't name them all, there's a bunch of them, but by the Oxford definition, there were many nations on this continent. So it was an American nationalist. No one. Another fiction. What is American nationalism? Once again, it's a fable. It's a strictly fictitious narrative. When I get, like I said before, get that odd quizzical look, I always answer, yeah, geographically, I'm American. I want to take a few minutes to give you some contrast and talk about Southern nationalism and our recent efforts in starting and maintaining the Southern nationalist movement. Why? Why would I want to do that? Well, I want to give you some contrast here. Something's real to something real that's, you know, compared to something that's a fable. And also because I'm a Southern nationalist, so are you. And Southern nationalism, like I said, is not a fable. It's real. A lot of confusion and arguments created, particularly on the internet, when you're debating someone about Southern nationalism or trying to explain something to someone about Southern nationalism. I think most of that confusion is over the definition of what nation is or nationalism is. Because we've been browbeating me for almost 60 years about this American nationalism. You know, I'm an American nationalist, you know, since I was, you know, it's great. A lot of detractors will say things like, well, we want to know what this nation is going to look like when we secede from the empire, or when the empire falls apart, which is probably the most likely scenario. Or what's going to happen to my Social Security, my Medicare, or the Medicaid, Well, what exactly are y'all gonna do with the black people? Or the Jews? Well, what's gonna happen? We wanna know. It's confusing. It really is, because people are not using the same definitions of the terms. You know? So they can't really debate accurately or talk accurately. All of these concerns are based on policies and politics of governments. Really not nationalism, governments. They're not based on people, kith and kin. Or a state, not a nation. You hear things like, well, yes, I'm a Southern nationalist, but I'm not with you on secession or independence because or unless, and just fill in the blanks. I'll fill in a couple of them for you. Unless you can tell me what's going to happen to my Social Security check, I'm not with you. Well, I'm a Southern nationalist, but I'm not with you. Or unless you can tell me what kind of government we're going to have, or what's going to happen to my military retirement. Just fill in the blank. You get all kinds of stuff. And I usually answer questions like that. I said, well, everything's negotiable. Everything's negotiable, except your kith and kin. You can't negotiate that, because it grew from the bottom up. Your nation grew from the bottom up. But anyway, most of the arguments and objections you get are based on Webster's definition of what a nation is, not the real definition. Our nation's already here. We don't need to grow it. We don't need to make it. We don't need to impose it. We don't need to conquer anybody. We're already here. All we have to do is unify. That's it. That's all we have to do. We don't have to build it, we don't have to grow it. It's here already. It exists. We just have to bring it together. That's what we're doing. That's why we're doing what we're doing. Southern nationalist is not a neo-Confederate. I know y'all heard that before, but that's what it is not. We are not a neo-Confederate. We are not concerned about reestablishing the Confederate States of America. We do learn from the past. I know everybody in here is a reader, probably. I am. I'm an A reader. I read red lights. It gets me in trouble sometimes. You know, people show me their IQ to me, and all this kind of thing. You know, because I'll be reading a book at a red light, particularly long, and I don't know when the light turns red, and I'll start getting all the, you know, descriptive hand signs. I had one guy one time, was in a truck or something behind me, screaming at me, "Hang up and drive." So I took my book and stuck it out the window. I wasn't talking on the phone. I was reading the book. But anyway, we're here. Our homeland is here. Our nation is here. We have to unify it. That's it. Bring it together. If you haven't already done so, I want to recommend something to you. And Brad is going to be speaking later today. But I told him last night I was going to do this. He wrote an article recently on his blog, which is called Occidental Descent. He can give you the website particulars. But he wrote an article recently on the logic of our street demonstrations, and I think everybody here should study it. Take a look at it and study it, because he nailed it. I mean, it's a perfect article as far as I'm concerned. I'd recommend you do that. It'll answer a lot of questions. It'll take care of a lot of your objections that you may have in participating in what we're doing. Participating in your Southern nationalist movement and the demonstrations that we're doing. Our message, the demographic displacement, demographic replacement of the Southern people resonates with the public like nothing we've ever done before. We're pulling in people, particularly young people, which I'm infinitely thankful for every day. That's what we need to do. We need to bring young people in, because some of us are getting up there. We know a lot. We can guide, strengthen, encourage the young people, but we just can't do what we used to do, some of us. Unless you're Charles Stoker. I don't know if he even sleeps. He's calling me at 6 o'clock, texting me at 6:30 or 7 o'clock this morning. So I'm down to Shoney's eating. Where are you? I'm still trying to get ready to go, you know? But that message is what we need. It's the right time for it, resonates with the public. We don't want to change it, we want to keep using it. And make no mistake about it, folks. You are being replaced. You are being replaced. You don't notice it in some of the big cities as much as you do in some of the little small country towns around here. I was coming through Union Point or Union City or whatever it is down there.
Union Springs.
Union Springs, yeah. How many Mexican restaurants were in that little one, you know, red light town? Yeah. Go down there. I mean, this is just a little town. Yeah, just a little town. It's just amazing. You're being replaced. Being replaced. So what do we do about it? This is really what this is reconstruction on steroids. Because everybody hates the South, except us, especially other parts of the country. This is, some of this stuff's in the way of recommendations, but I'm going to make them. We should not be dividing our efforts at this point along state lines. We should all be Southern nationalists, all. We shouldn't be Alabama nationalists, Florida nationalists, Georgia nationalists. We should be unified until we have thousands of activists in each state. Then we could probably take on another issue, another topic, or something like that, and sort of divide our efforts a little bit. But we shouldn't now. We should have the same message. We should all be Southern nationalists. The time for any division of our efforts is way down the road. That's what I'm saying. We need to all have a common message, common symbols, common propaganda. Use the same propaganda all the time. Everybody uses the same propaganda all the time. Don't change it. Don't modify it. I'll read you some propaganda here in a minute, just so you'll know what I'm talking about. Excuse me. Our memes that we've been developing, and believe me, we've had some very, very lively conversations when we were developing these things. Especially over one of them, I'll point it out in a minute, but all of the memes are developed around our Southern nationalist movement, all of them, okay? We have all the things in place already, and they shouldn't be changed until we win, okay? Until we win. Well, how do we win? When we're free from the empire. When we don't have that artificial corporation up there dictating through power and the power of the gun to everyone else, especially in the South. That's when we change what we're doing. When we win. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't often do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. When we are unified, when the Southern people are unified, it scares the hell out of our enemies. They're scared now. You can tell. They don't know what to do. They just keep doing something, writing the same things over and over and over again because they don't know what to do. They're scared. We scare them. The Southerners scare the world. I'm serious. We do. And that's what we need to do. We need to keep them in fear. It also gets, what we're doing also gets us a lot of free advertising. And the media is something we would have to pay thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for if we bought the advertising ourselves. Okay? So that's working. In organizing our efforts in chapter meetings, and I'll talk at the end of my talk a little bit about what we're trying to do in Georgia, we should continue to fine-tune our logistics. And what I mean by that, the Unreverend Al Sharpton put 1,200 people in front of the Florida State Capitol 2 days after we put 50 or 40 or whatever we had there. How did we do that? Logistics. He's got somebody there that sent the buses to the black churches and brought the people there. Just one guy brought them over, and they're all arm in arm marching down the street. That's something we need to work on, logistics. And it's going to take money, so we've got to raise money too. I'm not talking about within our membership. We need to raise money from our enemies. That's what we need to get. We need to take their money and use it against them. That's what we need to do. Charles was talking about that earlier, Charles Stokes. But anyway, we need to remain unified on our message, means, and symbols. In summary, we need to grow the support for our Southern nation. And I'm talking about finding other Southerners and bringing them into the fold. We have a working model. It is working. It is established. It's establishing our movement. It's attracting members, like I said earlier, especially young members to our ranks, which is what we need. I'm a member of the SCD, have been for 15 or so years, maybe longer. Since my son was 12, he was 10 when I knew him, so it'll be about 12 years. But their average age is going up. Way up. They're not attracting any young people to speak of. We are. We are. And it's our activism and what we're doing with the Southern Nationalist movement that's bringing them in. That's a fact. That's an absolute fact. We need to put, well, let me just say this. To those of y'all here that hadn't been participating, and I know some people just can't. I'm not being critical. I'm really not. This is just my thoughts. If you're not participating in the demonstration because the flags we're using, the message we're using, the dress code, you need to put those objections aside because we need to show a unified front. We need to be unified. We need to unify the Southern people, our Southern nation. You just need to put them aside because the model we got is working. Well, someone said something to me not too long ago about the new Southern, the new Southern nationalist flag, which I'm kind of fond of, and here's why I'm fond of it. It's our Southern nationalist symbol. Nobody can distort the history of it because we're making the history of it. And everybody, I had a guy over in Georgia, real academic kind of guy, he teaches psychology, I think. And, he said, well, let's just two guys sitting around and just made a flag up. And I said, well, every flag's made up at one point in time. I think, right? I mean, were they handed down from heaven? No, the only thing God handed down was some stone tablets with some law on it. I don't think he gave us flags. You know, and it's working because nobody can get a handle on that flag because there's no history here for them to get a handle on it. That's why, one of the reasons I like it. I think it's just a good looking flag too, but anyway. But anyway, you need to put your objections aside, get involved. We're not the League of the South that was here 5, 10, or 15 years ago. The League has changed. Our mission has changed. We're no longer just an educational organization. Okay, we're an activist organization. And I know change is hard. Believe me, it's been hard for me. I can assure you, it has. But it's necessary. It's necessary. Because our focus is no longer on the past. It's on the future. For our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, our extended families, our people, our Southern nation. That's what we're focused on now, reestablishing and unifying our Southern nation. We can learn from the past, don't get me wrong. Everybody loves their history in here more than I do. Okay, I've got thousands of volumes. You know, the actual books, not the e-book nonsense stuff. Although some of those are pretty good. But our focus is on the future. So we're not the League, even of 2 years ago. We're not. Our mission has changed. Will you join us, or will you continue to have objections? I'm going to just tell you a little bit. I want to thank you all, first of all, for listening and ask the Lord to be blessed. Ask the Lord if He's pleased to grant us success in unifying our Southern nation. Now, over in Georgia, Dr. Hill and I have been talking about this for quite a while because of the activism. The old chapter structure that we had in Georgia was a greet, meet, eat, retreat kind of thing, you know, similar to what the SCV does. And we'd have a speaker, you know, have somebody come in and take care of a little bit of business we had. It was almost kind of like going to a Lions Club meeting or something, you know what I mean? So what we're doing, and we're still working on this, it's not 100% set in concrete yet, but I'm moving the chapter structure, including the state chapter, into an activist mode. What I'm saying to the chapter chairman is this: when you have your meeting, I don't care if you have a speaker, that's fine, doesn't bother me a bit. But I want you to act, I want you active, so use that meeting to organize whatever activism you're gonna do that month, every month. I don't care if it's putting out some seed stickers, I don't care if it's taking business cards and putting them under people's windshield wipers, I don't care what it is. If it's just standing on the corner, like Dr. Hill does sometimes, and killing, handing out free magnolias. I want each chapter to be geared towards some sort of activism for that chapter. Now, if we have a major demonstration, then they don't need to have activism that month. They need to come to the major demonstration, but they need to use their meetings to organize, how are we gonna get there? Who's gonna carpool with who? That sort of thing. So turn the chapters into something besides just showing up and having a meeting. Turn them into an activist organization. Okay? And it's not that hard. You only need a couple hours on a Saturday morning. You know, meet for breakfast, have some fellowship, and then go out and sticker or hand out whatever, do something. You don't have to have a demonstration every month. That's not what I'm saying. But you need to be doing something. And when you start doing things like that, you're going to start attracting young people. Well, people, period. But young people primarily, because they see you doing something. They see you out there. They see you in the public. But anyway, Mike said that because some of our talks were so short, and mine is, he said I could have an hour, and I think I've taken a half one. But what I'd like to do is, if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can. If I can't, I'll point you to Dr. Hill and get him to answer them. If he can't answer them, we'll find somebody to answer them for you. But